if there's anything that you need to do there before. So welcome everyone to the Resourceful Therapist YouTube podcast channel. We're super excited here today, myself and Chris, to have the amazing Evonne Weinhaus joining us from, I'll ask in a moment, Evonne, that I've got the pronunciation, but let me tell you a bit about Evonne. Evonne is an Adlerian, so we'll find out what that means, and also a certified Imago's couple therapist who trained with Harville Hendricks and Rebecca Sears. And she is also an award-winning author of Stop Struggling with Your Teen, which she sent over to me kindly, selling over 250,000 copies, and A New Fearless You. And the wonderful thing is she's joining us, but she's also been on Oprah, on Donahue, Good Morning America, and Today Show. So we've got a real celebrity here. But we have had the pleasure, Chris and I, of meeting Evonne recently during our foundation training in resource therapy. So we're super excited. So thank you, Evonne, for joining us today.
My pleasure. I'm excited to be here.
I love that. Yes, you're a real yes person. I think that's so. We were catching up before the meeting here, and Evonne has kindly sent me these books, her beautiful books, and I was saying about the dedications here, which was they touched my heart. I want to sort of say that, I love that you're just in your career a go-getter, and I thought the word you use is adventure in here, and you're saying thank you to introducing you to a new adventure. You are an adventurer, aren't you, Evonne? So tell us a little bit. You're coming from where today? Crevecoeur? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Crevecoeur.
Thank you.
Yeah, what you can just call it St. Louis, but it's a suburb of St. Louis, Crevecoeur.
Crevecoeur, a suburb of St. Louis. That's fantastic, because here we are in Sydney, Australia, aren't we, Chris? And it's a bit of a grey day. It's 9 in the morning, and it's your Sunday evening. Yeah, fantastic. And you're also I've seen your website, beautiful, soundmindtherapy.com. It's lovely. There you, and that's where I happen to pull that bio from, several other therapists. So tell us a bit about Evonne first, before your therapy history of how you came as an Adlerian. I thought that's not a name we hear so often anymore.
No. Well, the truth of the matter is I happened to be a very good teacher at one time, and I thought that meant I'd be a good parent. The only problem was that my kids didn't get that message. So out of desperation, I joined my first parenting group, which was an Adlerian group. It was taught by Gary McKay, who wrote the STEP program. And for people who know me, they find this hard to believe, but the truth of the matter is I did not open up my mouth during the entire 8 weeks, not once. But I was I was very desperate, especially when my husband told me he was already a good parent. He didn't need to go to the parenting group. He'd stay home and babysit. So the teacher, Gary, talked about changing yourself. And I made up my mind that all I did was yell after 8:30 p.m. That's all I did. So I decided I would stop talking after 8:30 p.m., that I could do. And I made some other changes, and it was working. And to the point that my husband said, Evonne, something is happening in our family. I remember him scratching his head. You're yelling less and I'm yelling more. Delicious, Chris. Anyway, with that, I decided to go and get my master's degree because it really made such a difference in our lives, such a difference. He started joining parenting groups. I started teaching. And so I got my degree at Alfred Adler Institute. And that's how it happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
So from teaching and home, that's really interesting, isn't it? And I think the therapists that come sort of from that, your own personal experience and applying that, and
It was called desperation.
Desperation.
Yeah. Nothing fancy about it.
And I do love that it had such an impact, isn't it? And that's why we do what we do, is for change, So a master's in the Adlerian Institute. And then what?
Well, then I found out that I thought a counselor was this magical thing. And I realized when I got my degree, by me being a parent educator, because I couldn't call myself a counselor, and by leading groups, I really had been counseling. It was very, very similar. So I was very fortunate. I talked myself into a job at a pediatrician's office, and I became the family educator there. And that was wonderful. And I found out my clients liked it much better when I was a family educator before I was the fancy counselor. And then after that, I've been in private practice for many, many, many years.
A lot of experience there. And I imagine too, in these times in America, there in the US where you are, there's a lot of people crying out, I think, still for family education, for support. And unfortunately, psychology tends to be more focused on the individual, but we're part of a system, aren't we? The family, and parents are struggling. And
right.
So, and then what? Is there more, I should ask, because that's one of our tailor-made little things from Imago. I'm adding and layering in Imago there, because that's an interesting connection.
And then what happened? I guess what happened is my clients, they kind of laughed at me, wait till your kids become teenagers kind of thing, and they told me how it was called Groundhog Days, and where they stay in their room. And I had a couple parents that started a tough love group in St. Louis. And what I realized was, with tough love, it's either shape up or ship out.
Yeah.
And parents weren't developing credibility of their word. They weren't starting small. And I had read a book, and Robert Bayard's book, You're Acting Out Teenager. Mm-hmm. And it was like a light bulb went off in me, because he talked about a process. So I started writing, and I showed it to my girlfriend, who was going to proofread my pamphlet. Mm-hmm. And 9 months, she just had a few corrections. And 9 months later, we had a book. And back when we did it in 1980s, self-publishing was not that popular, and we self-published. And I would say the two important ingredients that I had, and was, number one was ignorance, and number two was guts.
Yeah.
And that took us far. We knew nothing. I knew nothing. And it's a good thing I didn't. I'm not sure I would have even, because it was really hard. And I had a client take pity on me and say, you need to go talk to this man. He will help you. And I remember him telling me, you've got to get directly to the reader. And I didn't understand what that meant.
Mm.
But what it really meant was forget the bookstore and get yourself in some magazines. Go directly to the reader.
Mm.
And we were fortunate enough that Family Circle picked us up as entrepreneurs, because at that time, self-publishing wasn't that popular.
Mm.
And we started selling 100 copies a day.
Wow.
And we absolutely had no way of distributing them. And I still remember being at my kids' soccer game, screaming during like the break, anybody want to make money? And had teenagers. I mean, we really started like a distribution factory at my house. And Art Uline, who was on the Today Show, had requested a copy.
Mhm.
And I followed up, and we got on the Today Show. And by that time, I forget, we did some good marketing. By then, a big publisher was interested in us. So
And which book was this, Evonne?
Stop Struggling with Your Teen.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
this one. Yeah. Because you've got another one too, Stop Struggling with Your Child.
Yes,
It's
I have.
fun.
Yes, I updated teen. I have not updated child, but it's all the same. You know, it's just different. You know, we live in a different time,
Mm-hmm.
so the examples are much different.
Yes, but still great grounding common sense advice. Chris?
So Evonne, I'm just interested in this, the writing of the book. So, you know, you said that you started with a pamphlet and then it went to be a book. I'm just kind of wondering about that, you know, I mean, there's a guy who I kind of quite like, a therapist from the States called Bill O'Hanlon. And I remember I went to one of his workshops and he was talking about writing books. And he said, I'm the author of, you know, like I've forgotten, you know, 15 books. And it was about that many. And he said, and what's the difference between me and someone who hasn't written a book, who's got a book in them? I wrote it. And I'm just wondering about that process for you, about kind of like what happened for you, how you kind of kept yourself motivated and got through that process. Because a lot of people have ideas and they've got great ideas about books and, you know, we can write something, and, you know, the old adage, there's a good book, one good book in everyone. You've got more than that, obviously. Yeah, can you just tell us a bit about that for you yourself, how that happened?
Well, I'm going to tell you about me revising Stop Struggling with Your Teen. Karen, my co-author, who I leaned on heavily, was not interested. And I really had no desire to write on my own. I'm a speaker. I'm not a writer, or I wasn't. I guess I am now.
Yes.
And, you know, I had a parent come in, and like many parents, she wanted her teenager to get fixed and she wanted to sit in the waiting room. That did not go over well with me. So I brought her in with her teenager, and Chris, all I wanted to do was to turn and give her my book. But my book had been out of date for many years. That was really the moment I decided to write. Now, here's what I did, because I'm really not a writer, or I wasn't. I made up my mind that I would write 30 minutes a day. And I decided to base it on quantity, not quality. So like if I didn't feel like writing, which that happened, I still had to spend 30 minutes. So I would look at competitive books, and that would count as my 30 minutes. I would do anything just to get that 30 minutes. And that got me started. And it was really helpful. So I would say just kind of moving your focus from quality to quantity.
Yeah.
At least for me, really worked.
Just get something out there.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
I-
It's funny because I just acquired a T-shirt from Philipa knows, and the T-shirt says "Discipline beats motivation."
Right,
I
right.
was just going to
Right.
say that
So
exactly.
every
You know,
day.
that left brain of ours keeps on saying it's not good enough. And so when it's focused on 30 minutes, it doesn't matter what the left brain says. So it kind of shuts it off.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. No, great. Thank you.
And you're developing a neural pathway, a writing part that's just dedicated and knows what to do. You'd get in position, and I imagine most of the time it's okay. You'd have moments, but fantastic. There's some good advice there.
The other thing I have a video program that goes with Stop Struggling with Your Teen that I'm really very proud of. And sometimes what I would do with that is sometimes I would tape it first and
Mhm.
just see what comes out of my mouth.
Mm.
And then I'd go back and listen to my tape and write it. And then I would tighten it up. But that's another trick.
Yeah.
And Chris, when I'm desperate, I do it in the morning and say I can't have breakfast until I get at least something done. And you'd be amazed at how much faster you can work.
That's yeah. I've worked extensively with children and families also, Evonne, in my career, and I used to know that as grandma's rule. You know, like eat the main meal before you have the sweet.
So
Very
true.
good.
Yeah. Fantastic. Good advice there on our budding authors. I might take that as well.
Yes. I know a budding author who could take some of that to the bank.
Yes, I've got the resourceful the resource therapy skills instruction manual under construction. it's faulted, but it's sort of halfway there. But and the other thing I think is really important, I'm just saying that even though I'm not there, is to keep moving forward, not look back on your work. I've heard that. And I've also heard what you're saying too, is another lady suggests just even recording what you want to write and then transcribing. I think
that's what a lot of what I did for my video. I mean,
Yeah.
because I know that material, I can do it in my sleep.
Mm.
So it's just kind of interesting to see what's going to come out of my mouth.
And interesting, I imagine I'm just going to resource therapy now. That's a different part to actually writing as opposed to orating. I think that might tap into different parts of the brain. Chris is, what do you think?
Yeah. But I want to come back and kind of just emphasize, because it makes a lot of sense to me what Evonne's saying. What you're saying, Evonne, about the kind of the discipline. I've read some stuff by famous authors, and they kind of say that they kind of do the same thing. They would sit down and they would write, no matter what came out, it had to happen. And then they could kind of go from there. They had something which they could then shape in some way. Yeah.
And no breakfast
before you've done it. Yeah.
Yes. And probably good timing too, to just sometimes I think to the beginning of the day, then it's done, and it's like
Right.
exercise.
Yeah. You know why the beginning of the day and late at night is good? This is such a great piece of trivia. The reason why you can probably write in the morning and at night late is that your left brain is lazy. So it hasn't woken up yet, and you don't have that critical part.
Yeah, right. Just your right brain creative part
Mhm.
downloading, and good to know.
Isn't that an interesting piece of trivia?
I love it. We love interesting pieces of trivia. And and continuing sort of on the writing thing, but more on how you marketed it, I've got to mention you were on Oprah.
Well, that was an interesting story. So my husband was going to go on a business trip to Chicago, and I thought, well, I'm going with him. Oprah's in Chicago, thus I should be on Oprah.
Of course.
The problem is that they didn't share my philosophy. So I called, I used to look at like who produced the show so I would know. So everybody's told me, you don't, you have an agent or something call, you don't call. So we had called our publishing when we self-published JB Spec. It was for initials for everybody that helped us. So I said I was JB Spec calling for Evonne Weinhaus. And let me tell you, I got nowhere. And so she was ready to hang up on me. Her name was Chris Tardio. And I said, you've got a warm voice. I'm going to tell you a secret. I said, I'm not JB Spec. I'm Evonne. I'm the author. And so then I could be myself. I didn't have to be, JB Spec. And it took me 3 years to get on Oprah. I was known as Chris Tardio's friend, and I would keep in contact with her. Meanwhile, they've gone national. You think I'm a famous author. I was really a stalker. So one day I call my house and I'm talking to Rachel, and we were supposed to do something the next day. And she said, well, Mom, you're not going to do that. I said, what do you mean? Of course I'm going to do that. She said, no, you're not. You're going to be on Oprah. So they had called and they needed the expert. They felt they needed one that talked more or whatever than what they had. And they said, what about Chris Tardio's friend? So I must have had maybe 48-hour notice at most. Yep. And that's how I got on Oprah.
Wow. Fantastic.
There's a lot of tenacity and stick with itness there. Unbelievable.
Yes. I wrote down perseverance, discipline, perseverance.
And I think also keeping in contact with her maybe 3-4 times a year. And she's a good person. Very nice. She made it happen.
So I'm just a bit curious about this, Evonne. You said you kept in contact with her for an extended period of time. Would you just ring up every now and then, say, hi, it's me, and how you doing, or what would you do?
Well, I would send her a Christmas card. If an article, an interesting article, I'll tell you the truth. I hate the word evergreen, because that's what they tell you. Your subject is evergreen, which means you could be on any time. So if I would see an article that maybe was timely, I would send it to her. And I think meanwhile, I got on some other shows and I would call her and say, I'm going to be on this show. You may be interested or whatever, but not a lot. I would say maybe 3-4 times a year at most. And if I found a funny card, that was something we talked about. But I was known as Chris Tardio's friend.
Great. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Very good. Very good.
Well, that sounds to me like you built a relationship up with Chris Tardio and became her friend. And when they needed you, it's like that, isn't it? And 48 hours later, notice you're on Oprah. Did you go into the studio or did they come to you?
No. When I was on Today's Show, they came to us.
Yeah.
But for Oprah, we flew up to Chicago. I mean, we went to Chicago. So.
And how was that experience? Because that would be otherworldly to me. Because I've watched Dr. Phil, we've watched Oprah, over the years. Because there's a lot goes into these programs, isn't there?
Well, I always hate when people ask me this question, because I really didn't like Oprah. She did not say one word to us. During breaks, she was on her water diet, then she'd run out. And then at the end, there were like 3 parents on, 3 experts on. She shook her hands. She didn't say one word. Not one word. So I think she is really a change maker of the world. I think she's incredible. But my one-on-one experience with her was nothing that I would write home about.
Less than
So,
warm.
no, she really
Yeah.
wasn't.
Yeah.
And you could always tell, like, she was in the audience with us. Whereas people who are really well known, she'll sit on the stage with. So I always could tell basically where she was, how kind of important the person was. Believe me, she was in the audience with us.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
And there's so much, I can just imagine. Oh, well, but interesting experience nonetheless.
I will tell you an interesting experience that happened when I was on Good Morning America. This is kind of an unbelievable story. So I like Good Morning America, Chris. It only lasted 5 minutes. You did not, like on some of the shows, you can't really talk too much. You got to have the parents talk. It's just, anyway. So I was on Good Morning America doing the 5 most common power struggles that parents experience. Boom, boom, boom.
Nice.
So I was in New York. I knew I should go to the museum, but it was pouring down rain. I figured I'm going home. I'm going back to bed. Phone rings. I think it's my husband to tell me what a good job I had done. And it was a parent, which they never, the show had given him my number, which they don't do. And the parent said, I remember this as if it was yesterday. If you are the expert on power struggles, help me out. I have a 3-year-old who had leukemia and I had a heart problem. I had a bad problem. Let's put it like that, life and death.
Yeah.
And when he took the 4th series of shots, he got to go home because he'd do it orally. And the 3rd was a choice. And they wanted him to take it orally and he wouldn't do it. So they literally, I know this is hard to believe, but they held him down, arm, leg, and then the 5th person poured the medicine. That was one thing they did. The second thing they did was they had the mom do a lot of toys. And then if he took his medicine, he could go in the bag and pick a toy. And the 3rd was, which I thought was the worst, was if he didn't take the medicine, he couldn't see his mom for 24 hours.
God, that is the worst for a 3-year-old.
So you can understand why I remember this story. So I said to her, do you have paper and pencil? She said, yes. I said, are you willing to take notes? She said, yes. So I went over with her. Number 1 is let him choose. Let him choose. Say something like, I'm getting a headache from nagging you all the time. It's your decision if you take it orally or intravenously. Because this kid had no control that he had the disease, but he could have some control over how he takes his medicine. So that was 1. Number 2, I said, do you think your kid gets to know that he gets to go home if he takes his medicine? She said, oh, yeah. I said, for 24 hours, I don't want you to mention it. And if you can get through 24 hours, then you are a success, regardless of how your kid responds. And then the 3rd thing I told her was, which I think is really, I think she was the most surprised. I said, if he takes the medicine, don't tell him you're so proud of him. And she said, why wouldn't I do that? I said, because if he gets mad at you, the first thing he's going to do is stop taking the medicine. So you may want to say, you seem really pleased with yourself.
Nice.
So Anyway, I'm a as the stomach turns person. And I said, let me know what happens. And 5 days later, he was released from the hospital.
Oh, great.
That's really one of my favorite stories to share.
Mm.
Oh, it's really, I got a wave then. I'm like, oh, because that poor mum, desperate, life-threatening illness. Of course, you're wanting to literally, and horrible scenarios, having to make these decisions, and a little 3-year-old who's very powerless, that you empowered through mum and continually did that in a sense of giving her some different options. And I love it. Thank you, Evonne. That is so touching.
Yeah, indeed. Great work. Yeah, fantastic. A lovely story.
I think the point for me, what I tell parents is these skills work with minor problems and they work with major problems. That happened to be a major problem.
Mm.
Yes,
Mm.
yes. And
Evonne, can I just ask you? I mean, you've been working successfully for a considerable period of time. I'm just wondering. I've been watching some stuff by a social psychologist called Jonathan Haidt, and he co-wrote a book about the coddling of America, and he talks very much about how American youth, like he goes through the generations, X, Y, millennials, etc., and how, in his estimation, and some of the statistics that come out that youth is becoming more fragile, less able to bounce back from adversity, more, and I guess the coddling of America kind of like sums it up. Can you just make some comments on that? I mean, how do you, what's your experience been over time of how those more general trends in youth and children and family are going?
This is one of those times, Chris, I can't wait to hear what's going to come out of my mouth because I really don't have the foggiest. But as you were talking, what went through my mind was coddling versus consequences. And I'm a real big believer in the school of life and consequences. And to me, that's really the direction. Now, you can't do that if it's threatening, but there is no better teacher than consequences. And what happens is, it came. See, this is what we're talking about. You just start talking and you see what comes. So many parents confuse love with protecting their child.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is they do exactly what you're talking about. And they want to realize that the real kind of real act of love is using consequences as a tool. It is not a weapon.
Mm.
So that's what I would say.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, indeed.
It's fantastic hearing you both, because you're both parent family therapists, actually. The two of you connecting, and it is an interesting topic. I'd like us to talk a little bit how you came also to be an Imago's couples therapist too, because what happened there?
Well, it's nothing very fancy. I needed CEUs, and I figured Harville Hendricks coming to town, he's famous. I might as well go see someone famous. I almost brought a book with me because
I would have.
And it was fantastic. And what happened, I really used to hate to do couples. And what happened, the more I learned about Imago, the more it really impacted my life, both personally and professionally. And I didn't even have couples at that time I was seeing. I literally, in order to get your degree, you have to see so many. I mean, I rounded them up. I mean, just so I would get the practice. So But I would say I do probably more couples work now than I do parenting work, or I do a great deal of couples work, and I really love it. And I would say my goal was always to understand Imago from the inside out rather than have it be external. And I really do think that I have accomplished that. It is become really a part of me.
Part of you. Ooh, can you tell us some more on how that's become a part of you? Because I Chris and I sort of relate. We're a husband-wife team here, and it is both personal and professional. Because the Imago, that's what I really love about it. I say to my clients, this isn't stuff I've learned. It's from a book and training. It's stuff I've used in my relationship with my husband that's deeply improved it. And the rubber hits the road here. And I think it gives you street cred when we encountered some issues, and you can pull out some of the Imago tools and the theory. It just fits. Evonne, yeah. Tell us some more.
I mean, it's on two levels. The procedure-wise level is the ability to really be able to summarize and hear what a person says, and to be able to talk to them in terms of what an Imago calls stems. So instead of asking my clients, or sometimes I do it with my friends all use the stem, the story I tell myself. Everybody I know knows that stem if they know me. We just use it. So in that way, procedure-wise, as far as really listening, using stems to really find out what's going on. On a deeper level, on a theory level, is recognizing how when I married my husband, I didn't know Imago. And when this hit me, if I had known Imago, I could tell you the exact moment it hit me. But I realized I was determined not to marry anyone like my dad, who had a really bad temper. And I was really proud of myself because I didn't. But what dawned on me was I married my mother. And I don't remember when it hit me. I hadn't started Imago. But, on a deeper level, how we unconsciously seek people that remind us of our caregivers, so we have a chance for a redo.
Yeah.
So that would be on a deeper level how it plays out.
That's a beautiful what the foundation of the theory is as well, that backs the procedure. And I'll just say about sentence stems are what we use in that therapeutic process that go beyond asking a question, because it really starts to go deeper. And hang on, as I tell the story, you're going deeper into the emotional parts of us. And I think that the connection, and that's what it is a power struggle for connection in all my couples. Yeah, that is a wonderful tool, isn't it? And you just get the most amazing results in the therapy room. I live and love for that, just have had a couple in that. And so I want to move us along into your resource therapy adventure.
This is really my favorite story. I really do, because you cannot make this stuff up, So this is how I got involved. Do you know this story, Chris, how I got involved in resource therapy?
A little bit, but I'm eager to hear further. Yeah.
Okay. So I was working with a client that, honestly, I was taking their money. I could not work with this client. I was not helping him. And that's not how I like to be with clients. I work hard. This wasn't happening. So we were on a Zoom call, and again, I was getting nowhere, and I thought, I got to switch this client out. This is not, I'm going to call another therapist. He won't answer. He'll be busy, but I'm going to see if I can refer him. Well, he picked up the phone, which I did not think he was going to do. So I invited him on the Zoom call. And literally on the Zoom call, I turned this client over to him. I introduced him to the therapist. I said it would probably be a better match than me. Adios. I really am, as the stomach turns person, and I wanted to know what happened. So I called the therapist about 3-4 weeks later, and he starts talking about bridging and ego state. Now, I'm a seasoned therapist. When I tell you, I had no idea what this guy was talking about. So I decided to Google, because I didn't even know what the word meant. And when I Googled, somehow, some way, Philipa's video that she had done with this gal, and you can come in and talk more about that. She had done a demonstration, and I watched it, and I showed it to the people I work with who know how I work. And they said, that's you. That is you. And I was fascinated. And it, to me, resource therapy combines Adlerian. Its behavior is purposeful. It's all parts are equal. Adlerians are real big on equality.
Yeah.
She naturally does Imago, correct? She was repeating. And it happened to be a role play, which I love to do with my clients. And there it was, everything I love done in this demonstration. And I finally, I did some more reading. I really liked it. And I decided to write you a letter and just tell you kind of my experience. And you were so gracious and so welcoming. And that's how I got involved.
Oh, so thankful you wrote that email and sent, and yeah, that's the purpose. I know the video you're referring to, actually, it's and I know it seems like a role play, but that is actually live. That's not pretend. That is real. Yeah.
Therapy. Right. But it touched me, because with my clients, I do a lot of role play where I'm the parent or I'm the child. I knew that I could, it's just everything I love. You know, it was so the way I work, and I wanted more. I wanted more.
You wanted more. Yes, I love that. You've got a huge learner part.
Well, you know, I started doing it with clients without really knowing that much. And it impacted the clients so much that I thought, oh my God, I gotta really do this right. This can be dangerous if not. And my client said, yeah, you know, go find out more.
Go find out more.
I got.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. A great hapstance that all that came to fruition in meeting you, Evonne. It's great. Fantastic.
And I'll say that too. It is good to, and now you've done the foundation, and of course we hope you're coming along the clinical. We're going to work that out somehow, that our American people, and supporting the training as well as the practice, because that's like day 4 actually of the training from that video, as you learn that process. I love that I love that you just gave it a go. And I think that is the key with any training, and be interesting. Even I think sometimes, you know, how you said earlier that ignorance is good. Sometimes when you're first learning resource therapy, you just dive in and do it, and you're not so worried about getting it right, just doing it. That really helps both, I think, you and your clients. And like you're saying, we're changeologists. This stuff really gets results.
Yeah. And I just want to add, you know, like on that thing about like the can-do kind of attitude that, you know, I myself have done this. I've been to seminars and stuff, and I've heard stuff, and I thought, oh yeah, that's really valuable. Have I ever kind of really actioned it and tried it? Not that much, you know. I mean, I have sometimes, but yeah. So I think that kind of can-do attitude and kind of let's have a go and see, you know, in the interest of empiricism, let's see if this works and how we can kind of work with it. So that's a great attitude, I think, to learning. Yeah.
Mm. Yes,
It
yes.
just tapped into all my belief system and the way I work. And it just gave me an integration
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
of
fantastic.
Adlerian, Imago, my love of acting kind of, you know. And
Yes.
I see, you know, I kind of call myself a translator. And it just really gave me the tools to help the client translate.
Oh,
Yes.
tell us more on that. Okay, so it gave you tools to help the client translate, kind of combining all this. I love that you said about Adlerian, that equality, because we know in resource therapy, there are parts, our ego states, formally called that because it's known as advanced ego state therapy, resource therapy, but all our parts are there for a purpose and value.
Yeah.
And sometimes they have gotten stuck or, you know, from that particular video, that was a very difficult circumstance, actually. That's part one of the video.
We, the viewer, literally could see her change right before our eyes.
And actually, there's a second part to that video, which I'd never put up on the YouTube, obviously, but where she talks about the loss of a parent. That was only the first part. The second one was even more just heartrending around a terrible loss and a huge freedom she got from that process. It's very
Yes.
healing. I like to say healing because it really is, and transformative.
Yes, it was. I mean, as the viewer, I would absolutely agree with you.
I'll have to put a link in there. So yes, what so just yeah.
That's what got me to write you. I think I couldn't find the video again. I was trying to share it and I couldn't find it. And I think that played a part in me writing that letter.
I think I remember that very first email. I saw your video. It was really amazing. Can get the link again. And I'll always respond. I just love that. We've, you know, getting people from all over the world, and because we've got the foundation now, you can actually, if you can't attend live, we've got the download where you do see it on video, and we'll always have a practice session where when we train as trainers, we want our participants to actively be involved and sit in the client's chair and have that experiential learning, because it just goes so far, doesn't it, Evonne?
Yeah.
And how you learn, and I've just seen so many. It's profound, it's so rewarding. And as you were saying earlier, you know, we don't do this job just to take people's money, and sometimes this is, I don't know, it's just changed. It's very freeing. I found resource therapy, you know, that's why I'm doing this stuff.
So, and just on that point, Evonne's done the foundation training, yeah? And I'm just wondering what your experience of you've been able to kind of action some of that stuff in your work with your clients, Evonne?
Yes, I absolutely have. I want more, but I've done the foundation, and then I've also done reading, you know, and given myself permission. Like there was a week that I just had fun. Like for every session, my goal was to do something that had to do with resource therapy. Just if it was to ask the basic question, what would you like to change this week? That I would check it off, you know? And so I bring in, sometimes I do the whole thing. Other times I'll just do a little part, like help them find a resource.
Powerful.
But you know, like you said, it doesn't have to be done, you know, perfectly. The whole idea that all parts are equal, we just have to help them get back to their healthy state is just, I think that's why it's so freeing. There is just no judgment because all the parts serve some kind of purpose.
Yeah, it is really freeing, isn't it? Knowing that the parts and their original way of being when they came into being, into neural pathways, were in that healthy condition, but something might have happened. And we're really clear on that. It's not what's wrong with you, it's what's happened to you. And then we develop, you know, what we call in resource therapy, our evaded states potentially and retro states to cover things.
Right. You know, like I had told Philipa, like people were saying, you know, it turned out I have no concept of time, from Australia time to St. Louis time. And I thought I had it all worked out. And I ended up taking this course on my birthday.
Yes.
Which, believe me, I had no intention of doing. So I had a lot of people ask me, like, why are you doing this? And so I wanted to kind of be able to give them an answer on what is resource therapy, you know, and because, you know, people would look at what do you mean it goes to 1:30 a.m. St. Louis time, and that's 2 days in a row, and it's on a Sunday night, and it's your birthday. Why are you taking this? So that was kind of fun to kind of try to come up with like a definition, or at least to help people understand what it is. So.
Oh, you did that so artfully as well. I think I looked on your website, the why, how, what. You answered that. That's really so. Yes.
Right. That, you know, that's another thing back earlier to talking about writing. I try now, like with my videos, the video, for me, it works, doesn't make it for anyone else. I do what it is, why it's important, and how you get there. And that has been a great structure for me. So I just kind of used that when I was trying to come up with what resource therapy is. So.
And yeah, and you really nailed it, Evonne. If I can ask you to do that again, because I love hearing that. What?
Well, let's see how well I remember it. Well, the what is, it's a parts. You know, we all have parts. That's what the personality is. And the why it's important is that each part can be a resource for us. It can be something positive. So that's what makes it really different and why it's important. And then the question is, how the heck do you access it? And the first thing you do is you have to discover the part. And you have to give it a name. And then once you discover it, then you got to go access it and really talk to it. And then the last part is then you begin to translate it from a pathological state to a normal, healthy state. And so that was kind of a quick definition that at least my friends understood what the heck I was doing, taking this course in Australia.
And honestly, that's a fabulous, I'm really truly impressed because you've just really artfully summarized. That's it's such an Imago thing to summarize so effectively what it is, the how, what, why, and the purpose. And that's what we're really about, actually. And, you know, because Chris and I never thought, I imagine, that we'd be online training and doing this stuff. It's funny how life evolves, like doing that sort of thing. So, and I like to always ask this, what do you think, with your seasoned experience, your wonderful lived life experience as well, as even though you're like I'm putting in quote marks, new resource therapy, because I think you're not new because you're a seasoned therapist to begin with. But Evonne, what skills and attributes would you say a resource therapist might need? Or we sort of answered that. What in your, just from your take
Oh my
and reading?
goodness, let's see. Well, I do think this whole concept of equality that I think is important that we treat other human beings with is that we treat all of our parts like that every part has a chance to speak. So I think to really believe that the equality, to really believe in that concept is really important. And I also think that I live thinking in everything I do that behavior is purposeful. So to really, when you hear a behavior, try to recognize that there's a positive purpose behind it. Even when someone lies, what they're doing is they're trying to problem solve. They're just doing it ineffectively. I think that's a really important belief. And then I love, with Imago, as well as with resource therapy, in Imago, it's called the story I tell myself, that it's a thought.
Yeah.
Whereas in like the role play you did, not role play, but in the demonstration that you did, that what a resource therapy calls an introject, but don't get worried by the word. It's just to show that it's that person or that object is a thought.
Yeah.
It's and that we recognize that we are more than our thoughts. So, I mean, those would be off the top of my head, 3 things that I would think would be important, or at least for me, what drew me to it.
Oh, and yeah, fantastic. Yeah, equality. We know that those parts, have a great purpose, a good purpose, and we can work with those. And yeah, I like what you're saying. I love that you said, don't worry about the wording of introject. It's just a thought. It's not even a real thing.
Right.
So,
and then I think also with resource therapy, it really gives the therapist the freedom to be creative.
Oh, yes. Yes, it does appeal more to the creative. Although there's a set of structures, like a skeleton that holds the frame up, you can be so artfully creative in your process. So like you're saying, you can dip in and use like find resource to help find a better part to manage a previously not helpful situation, or you can do the whole thing. It is really like that, the creativity.
Right.
Creativity within structure. Yes.
Yes.
Which creates a sort of safety, I think, knowing that, hang on, you've got the fallback, there's actually 15 resource therapy actions. And I do love, because Gordon Emerson's creator is actually, from your area, actually.
I know, from Missouri.
A lot of good stuff comes out of Missouri, obviously. And you have that, but you can innovate as well. And then like you're saying, when you're saying equality, I think it's an empowerment, very much an empowerment centered. It's
I agree.
And trauma informed, because we know it's not what's wrong, it's what's happened. And with the empowerment protocol, which we learn about in the clinical training, it is really it's just so amazing. And it also, which we haven't really touched on here today, but it helps with, which will connect for Imago and other type attachment focused therapists. It helps heal from the inside out, because we have processes, a technique actually that really gets a person in touch with their inner healers they're an attachment figure that no one can take away. I think there's another video I do actually with a beautiful, it's not actually visual, but it's just us talking. It's a parts update, and she says something along that line, that this attachment figure that she's got it inside her, no one can take away. It's not going to leave her. It's not going to die. It's hers. It just was, yeah, it's been a real revelation to me in the small amount of time. Yeah, so, well, it's coming to the end of our time here today, Evonne. Chris, have you got anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I know. I just want to thank Evonne. It's been fascinating to hear about her journey and you know, the things she's achieved. And yeah, I'm looking forward to her further journeys with resource therapy.
I am too.
Yes,
Thank you.
and we're glad to have Evonne as our friend as well. It's like that. We're wonderful. Thank you, Evonne, really, for making the time on your Sunday evening to join us here and share your adventures. And
Yes, thank you.
Oh, I loved it. Thank you for inviting me. I mean, I never dreamed that I'd ever be a guest when I first started the process. So thank you.
You're welcome. My dad, I was on the phone to him the other day. He's like, how do you get these amazing guests? I said, I don't know. They come out and I ask them and they're friends. They say yes. So thank you. You're a yes person.
Yes. This was very much fun.
Thanks, Evonne. So I'm going to stop recording. Thanks, everyone. I'll put some information in the links below. You can actually see that video. Make sure that video is in there and find out some more about our training courses. Thanks, everyone, for watching the Resourceful YouTube channel. Till the next time. And drop a comment below if you like what you saw. If you didn't, that's okay too. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.